Welcome to Brave Inflections. My name is Claudelle van Eck. I am the founder of Brave Inflections, and I have with me Russ Stoddard, and I hope that I didn't kill your surname. We've been chatting earlier on about the pronunciation of his surname and how I have a tendency of killing people's names. But thank you very much, Russ, for joining me in this video. This is the second of two videos. So if you've stumbled on this one and you haven't yet listened to or watched the first video, I do encourage you to go and watch that one. You may even want to go and watch that one first and circle back, because I think it's important for you to have that background around the conversation that we've had earlier on. Because we're talking about changing the way we think about the system and thinking about the business world, and how we need to start to just shift as a society to a more sustainable way of living and the social contract that we should have with each other, hey Russ, as humanity, as a collective. But before I jump into my first question, Russ, can I ask you to maybe, just for those who haven't yet watched the first video, just to give us a quick background on yourself. So in the previous one, we did go into a little bit in terms of what your business does later on. But for those who haven't watched the video yet, can you maybe tell us a little bit about yourself, but also tell us a little bit about your organization?
Oh, sure. I'm Russ Stoddard, founder of Oliver Russell, which is a certified B Corporation, and primarily works on social impact branding and marketing campaigns for clients that are purposeful. That means that they have intentionally selected a product, service, or business model that benefits society. Yeah, where was I?
Well, and in the previous conversation, you talked a little bit about your how close you are to nature and how important that is to you.
Oh yeah, I'm a nature boy. We've got a small farm here in Boise. I started out my career as a river guide in a wilderness area, so I'm all about the nature, and as much as anything, just the way you feel when you're in nature and the healing aspects of being outdoors, whether that's the sunlight, whether that's the chemicals that are released by plants or what have you. I've even got an outdoor shower where I shower most all the time. So I'm totally a nature boy.
So when you say most of the time, are you talking about those insane winters? Sorry, I'm in Africa. For me, your winters are insane. You shower outside in those insane winters of yours as well?
Oh, sure. You know, I do it all summer long for sure. And I turn the water on just as cold as it can get because it's hot here. Then the winter, I'll go out there and I'll just pretend it's a natural hot springs out in the wilderness. So it's good.
Russ, respect. You have just earned, I'm telling you, you have just gone right up there in my head. It's like, wow, there is no way in hell that you'll find me in your winter showering outside. Absolutely not. But I do absolutely agree with you when you talk about nature and us being close to nature and the healing properties in nature. You know, I came across the concept of a forest bath, which is practice, I think, in many parts of the world, but the terminology forest bath really comes from Japan. And I did one with a group of women earlier this year, and just the ability to connect with nature and seeing how that just ignites people and able to draw energy from nature. But then, of course, we need to look after nature if we want to draw from nature. And that's one of the things that I know that is very dear to your heart.
That's one of the big challenges right now. How do we take care of nature?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Mother Nature's taken care of us for as long as we've been here, and we haven't been nice. We are problem
Yeah.
children.
And now she's given us a big wake-up call.
She is. And I mean, I've been for a long time, I've been saying that human beings are the virus. We are like a virus because we are so destructive. And hopefully where we are now, we will really start to rethink our ways and become good children to Mother Nature and take care of her as well. Russ, in our previous conversation, we talked about rethinking this concept of value creation in organizations being for the sole purpose of shareholders, and moving to a much more stakeholder inclusive approach where we think broader about the benefits or how other stakeholders benefit, and not just the shareholders. So those who haven't yet seen the first video do need to go and have go and watch that video to understand the concepts that we talked about, and in particular public benefit organizations. But when we talk about that shift and move away from sole focus on shareholdership, and when we live in a society that's really been brainwashed over time, and we talked about that start in the early 70s into thinking that businesses are created for shareholders, or that the shareholders are the ones that have the right to extract from the business. Surely if we were to move to a more stakeholder inclusive approach, which I think is very noble and I absolutely support it, we should probably be expecting some pushback from the shareholders, which already have quite a bit of power because they're the ones who sit with the financial capital. How do we deal with that so we don't have a lose-lose situation?
Well, it's interesting. I think you're right with many of the shareholders, there would be that pushback. And anytime you have a paradigm shift or a regime sort of change, you're going to get pushback from the old order. But what we're also starting to see is some shareholders that are a little more enlightened, and they look at the ways businesses have been operating and realize that there is an inherent risk involved with that. And investors hate nothing more than big time risk and uncertainty. So you're starting to see some shareholders shift to where they're actually asking the companies to behave in these ways that are beneficial to many stakeholders, because they look at it as managing risk. So I think you have a push and a pull there, and that while there will be pushback for sure, I think there's a lot of forces that are starting to pull in the direction of this as being a long-term way to create sustainable profits rather than just short-term.
And we've been talking about the shareholders and that, I suppose, enlightenment that we need to come, but they have also put people in charge of their organizations. So through appointing boards, directors, and they're also on the board within appoint executives, and you could quite easily have this very vicious cycle, because your executives' incentives are tied to the degree to which they create value for the shareholders. So to change that, one would at that level also need to have a shift in thinking, especially those who would have the power to make the change. How do you think we would be able to get that done?
Well, I think a lot of it is education of boards. And if you look at this as an opportunity to explain to them that there's a threat and an opportunity for their company in this changing marketplace. I think that's the first step right there. And it's interesting. They'd be very, very open to the fact that they say if they lost 1% of their customers, that would affect their profits hugely, because it's like that last percent of sales that really drives profits. If they look at it from their investor standpoint and realize that, wow, actually our cost of capital might decrease if we adopted some of these beneficial practices, that's another way. And then, right now, most companies around the world are experiencing kind of a super hard time getting the talent that they need to attract to actually operate the companies. And there's a huge groundswell and shift amongst workers who are looking to apply their talents and their trades at companies who align with their values and do these things. So there's a lot of metrics that you'd be able to use there that are pretty compelling to somebody who's always had just a bottom line financial profit mindset. I think another approach that I like to use with the board of directors is to say, okay, here's our little exercise. Our largest customer, this would work, say, like a B2B sort of setting. Our largest customer has just called and said they would like to see our social and environmental practices and a report card on them by the end of the day. Could we do that? So that drives home the fact that somebody in the supply chain is vetting everyone, and there's a huge risk. And have they done anything to actually aggregate or act on these sort of things in ways that would be substantive? So it frames risk for them in another way, that they could be replaced perhaps easily by a large customer if they aren't behaving in these ways.
So it really is about getting that conversation going at board level, and the board also then ensuring that the manner in which they frame the performance agreements with the executives, that pulls through there. Because if you don't measure the executive's performance with those principles in mind, then you're not going to get the results you want to get.
Oh, you're exactly right. And there is a lot of work to be done there. That is for sure. We're a certified B Corporation as well, which is a voluntary assessment of your social and environmental impact that you create as a company. And one of the key metrics there is your ratio of CEO to lowest paid worker pay. So that's part of this whole movement, is to look at things and see, can we get the inequality that has just broadened by the day, whether that's societal or within the halls of a corporation, to kind of come back into sync a little bit more closely, and the whole pay and performance structure of corporate executives and the boards that are on the compensation committees just absolutely has to change.
Mm. And a thought that's just come to mind now is, I'm wondering whether societal cultures have an impact on how business leaders would see the risks and the impact on society. And here I'll differentiate, and of course there's a whole spectrum and a continuum, but differentiate between collectivism and individualism. It feels to me like we have over time moved more and more towards individualism, and that would contribute to making it more difficult for business leaders to see the broader impact on society. What do you think?
Oh, I think you're right. Whether it's South Africa or here in the States, we've moved more towards individualism when it comes down to it. And I think that's where things definitely need to shift as well, to see if we can get back in our fragmented world, if we can get back to where we can actually, and it's going to take an awful lot of work. The schisms are so big, the gaps so wide in some places, that if we can come together, whether we're coming together as consumers to actually either support a company or perhaps to withhold our trade from those companies. Those are very, very powerful. Whether we could come together, and it's the judgment is really out here in the States, but because labor unions have been on the downfall for a long time. But what we're also starting to see in the world of business is the rise again of cooperatives, whether they're consumer owned or worker owned, where people are banding together to actually form structures that give them a voice and a vote in the companies they have. So I wish I could give you some answers there, but I think that is part of the answer, is which we as a people need to come together and actually seek change in business and society more productively than we have as individuals.
Yeah, because I almost have the sense that, that individualism and capitalism, as we've seen it develop, are intrinsically linked, and that and I'll ask forgiveness from the producers of Kool-Aid, but we tend to talk about, we've all been drinking the Kool-Aid, and we've become indoctrinated, and there's almost an addiction, it seems to me, to capitalism. And the minute one starts to talk about something different to capitalism, one can also see that there's been this little bit of indoctrination of, if you want to talk about an alternative, that is almost seen as evil. That is, you can't think about anything other than where the system is now. And it feels like we need to wean society, humanity, off that addiction. And it's like, and where it kind of really hits me sometimes is when I read on Twitter, when young people talk about dreaming about becoming billionaires. And I often wonder, where we think about, do you know what it takes to become a billionaire? You are going to have to exploit. You can't have a world where you have some billionaires without the exploitation that will take place inevitably in the process. And how do we wean ourselves off that addiction, that indoctrination?
Oh, wow, that's a tough one. I'd say I'm starting to see that with younger generations. It's tough for the older generations. They're already ingrained with it in some regards, but younger generations, at least here in the States, and I'd say in Europe and Latin America, I'm not as certain about the scene in Asia or Africa. They feel as if the compact has been broken in some regards, and that prior generations have left them holding the bag on everything from college debt to climate change to social inequality and what have you. So I think the stage has been set for them to work through their careers in business and actually do it in a different way that does not hold up the idolatry, the false idolatry of financial gain and billionaires as rock star heroes. At least I think there's the opportunity there, Claudelle.
And it really is, I think, some responsibility on leaders to start to channel the conversations in the right direction with the young people. Because I'm almost seeing, although I've mentioned those who dream about becoming billionaires, I also agree with you that one sees the signs of young people who are saying, the previous generations have really failed them and have handed over it's not just the debt, it's the environment that we've destroyed, and they are going to live in the consequences. We kind of still okay, but the next generations are really going to have to deal with the consequences. But it seems like we need to have more conversations to increase that consciousness, and I'm almost wanting to say ignite the anger that would drive the change in the young people. They ultimately, it is about their future.
Oh, it is for sure. And all I can tell you is the younger people that are in my orbit, there's plenty of anger there as well as angst. And I think the deal is to take that anger and channel it productively into action, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's there, and I'm fortunate also to work with a number of people who are, say, in their 20s and have come to their careers in a way differently than many people. It's like, okay, I want to make a change with my talent, and I'm going to seek out employers that will allow me to do that. So I really have a lot of hope and optimism about younger generations moving through the workforce and actually affecting a lot of this change that older generations haven't.
Yeah, no, and I'm with you on that. And I just do hope that we don't have this vicious cycle continuing where people drink the Kool-Aid the minute they start to earn money and they start to feel the power in organizations. And instead of changing the system, conforming to the system. Now, I had a conversation with a group of employees from an organization about a week or so ago. And in South Africa, Women's Month, August is Women's Month, and it's lots of organizations focus on, I suppose they have these women's days and bringing people in to talk to their staff. And one of the things that I said to the woman in particular was, if your voice is not going to change things, so if you're not coming in with a different voice to balance things out, and you're just conforming to the system, why do we need you there? So and it's, I think for me that's the same message that one would want to give the young people, that you need to be the force for change, but don't fall for the idol. So when you do see the money and you get the golden handcuffs, because this is how the system works.
Yep.
It rewards, the system rewards those who conform. And it tends to resist and make it very difficult for those who want to change. But if you want to see the change, then you need to make the sacrifice. So having a little bit of long-range vision as opposed to the very shortism that we've been dealing with, where people just think about themselves, but also just think in the short term and not seeing the long-term effects.
Oh, for sure.
So if we were to then talk to those young people who have now grown through the ranks and they really want to change things, and they would love to see their organization start to emulate what you guys are doing, and so in terms of, I would like to see myself working for a public benefit organization, because sometimes I get the feeling that people think that if money is not going to be the ultimate driver, that people won't be motivated. And that doesn't feel right to me, but that essentially is what you often get. Like in conversations about degrowth, people tend to think if we're not going to talk money, people will not be motivated. But if this young person now says, I kind of get this. I believe that this is the future. We need to change organizations' focus to stakeholder inclusiveness. This needs to become a public benefit organization. And he needs to now go and have a conversation with hardcore capitalists on the board. What advice would you give that person?
Oh, geez, I'd find a company that can demonstrate that its actions line up with your beliefs, because that's oftentimes where the disconnect is. And I would say it doesn't mean that by working at a company that is actually contributing to the world rather than subtracting from it, that you need to necessarily earn less. But you should also think about the big picture of how can you lead a life of meaning and have enough over time that allows you to live a good life, but doesn't leave you wanting for always wanting more, because more always grows into the next step and happiness does not necessarily come with it. And it's that more that gets all of us into problems. So power, money, they're intoxicating. And, you know, I get it. I've been around 6+ decades now. So I've been through all the cycles and everything. But, you know, truly the best thing is like when you have enough and at the end of the month, you aren't having to scramble, and neither is your neighbor, right? And everybody feels as if they have enough, as opposed to they're just into this rapid accumulating of more and more and more. So I'd say find a company that will pay you well, that will value well, whose actions are indicative of the world you want to create, and go work there and find fulfillment there.
And I suppose we can also have the same kind of conversation with young entrepreneurs. So if you're going to be starting your own business, to start to think about what kind of business do you want to run in the long run? Is this going to be an organization, a business, and that would benefit society? And that is how we change things as well, you know, so that those who start new businesses start with the right mindset.
Yep. I do an awful lot of mentoring and facilitating of young entrepreneurs, and the ones I work with are 100% cut out of that cloth, that they want to have a career where their business creates social and environmental impact. And I tell them right out of the gate, first thing is like, don't forget how important to have a financial profit it is, because without a margin, there's no mission. And what you're using that money to do is create resources and energy that actually enable you to make changes. And I believe it's a tougher business model. Because business is just tough as it is when you add numerous stakeholder groups. So in essence, you're trying to create profit for many. It's a little bit more complicated, but so much more worthwhile. And so I start with that profit deal, because everybody comes in, they talk about the impact, and I want to talk about the energy of financial resources. And the next one, what is the impact? What's the change you want to make in the world? What is your purpose? And then from there, we start talking about, okay, what are the best business models for social impact that we might choose from here to help you create this successful business?
And wouldn't it be great if we had more of that kind of conversation in business schools?
Oh, it sure would. And, you know, it's growing there as well. It's still not the predominant curriculum of business schools, but I have so many conversations with professors, deans, students, and what have you, that it's definitely on the move. This past year, our company, Oliver Russell, actually worked and did a coursework with 2 different universities here in Idaho to actually help them incorporate a program for social impact as far as their students go.
That's really, really encouraging, and hopefully we'll start to see more of that, and hopefully everybody who watches this video will feel a little bit of a push to go and make that difference and think about, because for me, my underlying philosophy in life is that every one of us has a purpose. And it's important for you to know what that purpose is and ensure that whatever you do aligns to the purpose. But also at the same time, understand that your purpose is not just for you. Your purpose, you've got something special that enables you to contribute to the collective. And if you don't live your purpose, you're robbing the collective from what the collective should have been getting from you. And if you understand that with clarity, then it becomes a lot easier to see your impact, the impact of your actions. And if you are in a leader in an organization, then it becomes very natural. An extension of looking at the impact of your purpose within to look at the impact of your organization. But the more and more we make people conscious, I don't know, so maybe let me put this on the table and see what your thoughts around this. And maybe I'm just the eternal optimist. I honestly believe that most human beings, because we are social beings, want to be seen as good people within the context of the collective and do good. It is just a matter of, I suppose, people don't always see the opportunities where they can be that. Although the opportunities are there, they may just not see the opportunities that are there for them. What are your thoughts around that?
Oh, I think I agree that everyone wants to have the esteem and recognition of self from others. Sometimes it can be awfully hard to activate that when it comes down to it, Claudelle. Say you're in your young family years, you have 2 wage earners, you have 2 kids, you're running like crazy, 1,000,000 miles an hour, and it's like tough to see where those opportunities are separate of that core purpose as far as the family goes and raising a healthy family unit, and then getting to a point to where how can you contribute? A great way to contribute is by raising kids who then go on to contribute. But I think it's also about looking for opportunities or allying yourselves with friends and groups that bring opportunities to you, or finding, we go back to the workplace. We spend about a third of our lives there, finding a workplace that allows you to actually live out your purpose, and it brings opportunities to you as part of the work.
And also, as we talked about earlier, not deciding what is enough. Because sometimes we are in this rat race and we haven't really considered whether what we have now is enough, or more, in lots of cases, more than enough. And I often wonder whether in terms of human nature, this continual building on what we have. So we're creating pictures of what success looks like. And that picture has to continue to expand. And the more we have the inequality in the world as well, the more I think it becomes difficult to get people to see what enough looks like. I often wonder whether we know what enough looks like.
I think that's one of the silver linings, if you could call it that, of the pandemic, as we all had a large reset that made it easier for us to see what enough is. And some of it's at the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy, the pyramid, right? It's like to have shelter, to have health, to have food. And then I think when many of us went through that exercise, it made us more empathetic and compassionate to others who historically, even separate of the pandemic, have not had those things. And so I think personally, it allowed us to get into a different mindset where we can act different in our own lives. But then I think outside ourselves, whether we are becoming politically active, whether we are contributing our financial wealth to causes, whether we are volunteering or what have you. It made us open to the world outside ourselves in some ways that I don't think we were previously.
Yeah, no, I do agree with you on that. I hope that we keep the momentum going.
As do I.
Yeah. And we don't reset into our old ways, because that would just really be bad for us. Russ, thank you so much for once again being so generous with your insights. I really wanted to have this conversation with you because I think you're one of those, the few people I know who really has in practice been outside of the Kool-Aid or the system that we have become addicted to. And I think it is so important that we have examples like you who can help us to start to think differently. We don't have to just think about ourselves. We don't have to just move organizations forward only for the benefit of shareholders and exploit. We don't have to live in a world where there's so much inequality and we're all just worried about ourselves. We can do better. And you're one of those examples where one can say, yes, here's an example of how it can be done. And we can, as human beings, we can do better. So thank you so much for spending the time with me. I really, really appreciate your insights, and thank you to the viewers for watching this video. As I mentioned right at the beginning, this is the second conversation of two. So go and have go and watch the other video if you haven't done so yet. I'm pretty sure that you'll get some good insights from our previous conversation as well. It is really about shifting the way we see ourselves, the way we see the world, and what we can just reimagine how we can recreate that social contract amongst ourselves as societies, as human beings. Thank you. And if you subscribe to the website, you'll be notified whenever I post something new. Subscribe to the YouTube channel as well. But go and have a look at the rest of the website. There are lots of other nuggets on the website as well. Russ, thank you again. I really, really appreciate it.
Claudelle, it's been so great. Thank you so much.